The so I think it's 9 o'clock, so we'll start. I think Dr. Aditya Patil, who is our plastic surgeon, will be mainly moderating this session. I think I am much of a interested spectator rather than moderator. I think we have Dr. Pavan also. I have requested Dr. Shivram to invite the plastic surgeon from Aster, which he has done. And I've also invited Prashant Kesri, just to give, I think the gravitas to the session and also to get as many views as possible. And also for the students, small tricks and technical aspects of flaps, which they may be able to use when they start doing surgery. So, um, as you know, flaps have made a major strides, have made major strides in the last 20 years or so, and they are now the integral part of any reconstructive surgery. And because of their tremendous impact, lot of mutilating surgeries have now become much more, aesthetically pleasing reconstructive surgeries.
Reduces.
So, without much, I think everybody knows the importance of flaps. So, without much delay, I will hand it over to Pavan and Aditya to kindly take over and moderate. And Pavan, from Bellary, you are our second moderator, and feel free to interject at any time to express your views and this one, because you know how the surgical teaching works here. So you are welcome anytime to interject. Thank you. Right, Pavan?
Thank you, sir. Sir, can I start, sir?
Yeah, please.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Pavan, first year DNB resident from Sagar Hospitals. Today, I am going to discuss on flaps. So, history of flaps. Um, um, Pedicle flaps in the face and forehead of the forehead were used for nasal reconstruction, but done by Sushruta in 1600 BC, who is considered as the father of plastic surgeon. Whereas uh, Tensini in 1896 used latissimus dorsi flap for breast reconstruction. Gillis used tube pedicle flaps in 1920. In 1946, Stark used muzzle flaps for osteomyelitis. And Mathis and Nahi, based on the vascular anatomy, classified the muzzle flaps in 1981 in the Spontan described fasciocutaneous flaps. So the um, skin anatomy, that is skin is divided into various layers, that is epidermis, dermis, hypodermis, and subcutaneous tissue, fascia, and muscle and bone. Whereas in skin, that is various facial plexus are there, out of which that is subepidermal plexus, located at the dermoepidermal junction, consisting of mostly capillaries, helps in nutrition.
Pavan? Pavan, not audible, Pavan.
Pavan, what happened? Pavan, I think is Hello. Hello. Good evening, Aditya.
Hello,
Can
sir.
you hear?
How are you, sir?
Thank you for being the moderator. I
Thank you
think
for inviting me.
Pawan has having some problems.
I know, sir.
Good evening to you, Naz. Welcome.
Good evening, sir.
I think Abdul, just look into what is Hari, what is
Yes,
going
sir.
on.
I'll
with
call
the-
him. I just called him, sir. He was not aware of this audio gone. He's logging off and logging in a minute.
Okay, right. Okay, Aditya, you can give. I think I gave us brief introduction. Probably your introduction will be much more. This one, you can talk briefly till we get back, Pawan.
About myself, sir?
No, about you, maybe yourself, and also about the flaps.
The flaps, so when he came to me, he told me he'll do about flaps and grafts, but I said flaps in itself is quite a big
Yeah.
topic, and grafts
Yeah.
itself is another big topic. But from the general surgery point of view, also flaps are quite important,
Correct.
at least to know the basic classification and to know at least a few flaps which are commonly done, and axial flaps, and they also need to know a bit about free flaps, which is right now on the increasing trend, microvascular surgery.
Yeah.
So, so that's why I told him to focus more on flaps. And so I think maybe I'll just, as a concluding remarks, I'll just add on to his presentations also,
Sure.
depending on what he says, sir.
Sir, Ajit here, sir.
Yes, Ajit.
Sir, I spoke to him some technical issues. He was speaking there, but we were not able to hear him. So after
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, sir.
Pawan, are you back on?
Yes, sir.
Start sharing the screen and start. Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Sir, now
see.
it is okay, sir.
Yeah. Now it is okay. Yeah.
Can you go back? I think you missed a couple of. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Go back to the first slide.
Can I start from?
Yeah.
first one?
Start.
Yes, sir.
Start.
No, the next one.
From anatomy, you can start, I think.
Anatomy. Skin anatomy.
This
Yes,
is
sir.
finished.
Slide.
This is
Next.
finished.
Here.
Yeah. Start from here.
So the anatomy of the skin consists of epidermis, dermis, subcutaneous tissue with fascia, underneath is muscle and the bone. There are various facial plexus which are divided into subepidermal plexus located at the dermoepidermal junction, consisting of mostly capillaries. Whereas dermal plexus, which is located at the lower limit of the papillary ridges, consisting of arterioles, helps in thermoregulatory function. Subdermal plexus located at the junction of the reticular dermis and the subcutaneous fat, containing arterial muscle walls, with primarily helps in blood supply to the skin. Subcutaneous plexus, which contains a network of capillaries which divide the fat into deep and superficial fat. Prefacial plexus is the most dominant distributed system in the facial plexus. Underneath is the subfacial plexus, having relatively minor plexus. So the image in the slide shows various layers, that is depending upon the tissue having epidermis with varying amount of dermis, with one vascular with divide of blood supply, it is considered as graft, and the block of tissue having its own blood supply and transferred to the another location for reconstructive purpose is considered as flap. The image in this slide shows graft having does not having that original blood supply, but flaps having their original blood supply. So skin lines, the lines of tension in the skin were first described by Dupuytren, which are later described by Langer as Langer's line. So both just referred to the skin lines as relaxed tension lines. So the various differences present between the grafts on the flaps. Grafts are limited to the transplantation of the skin. However, flaps can be carry other tissues also. Whereas grafts depends upon the recipient site for nutrition. Flaps having its own blood supply. Grafts having poor cosmetic outcome, it may have discoloration or contraction of the graft, whereas flaps have better cosmetic outcome, having better color take and less likely to contract. Grafts having less adaptable to weight bearing, flaps are most adaptable to weight bearing, whereas grafts less able to survive on the bed with questionable nutrition, flaps can be used on the bed with questionable nutrition. Grafts require pressure dressing, whereas flaps does not require pressure dressing. Grafts cannot bridge defects, whereas flaps can bridge the defects. So the flaps, as I discussed, that flap is a tissue which is having its own vascular supply that can be transferred to the another location for reconstructive processes, and it is the last step in the reconstruction ladder. So a proper regional anatomical knowledge is essential to perform a successful procedure of flap. So while performing any reconstruction procedure, we have to follow the reconstruction ladder, starting from the wound healing from secondary intention to free tissue transfer through various steps like direct tissue closure, skin graft, local tissue transfer, and region tissue transfer. Nowadays, reconstruction ladder is replaced by reconstruction elevator, which is the gold standard process. So,
Just a
physiology
minute.
of the flap survival depends upon the various physiological factors, that is blood supply of the flap through its base or axial blood vessel, formation of new vascular channels between flap and the recipient blood, and the perfusion pressure of the supplying blood vessel. So after elevation of the flap and after elevation and transfer of the flap to the recipient site, there are various changes occurs, that is within 10 to 24 hours of the flap elevation. So there will be ischemia, congestion, and the edema of the flap, and followed by dilatation of the arterioles. In day 1 to 3, there is the formation of the new vascular channels between the flap and the recipient bed. On fourth to 7th day, there is a reorientation of the vessels along their axis and becomes functionally significant. At the end of establishment of the circulation, at the end of 3rd week, flap achieves 90% of its final circulation.
Okay, Pawan, stop here.
So,
Pawan, stop.
yes, sir.
There is a few questions.
Yes, sir.
Nishant asks, what is septocutaneous? I'll just get the question. Nishant? Nishant?
Yes, sir. In that
You
image.
have two questions.
Yes, sir.
Septocutaneous artery, and the other one is, you asked about bridging of tissues. So you
Yes.
can ask the question yourself.
Sorry, I don't know the answer because I just saw this, the diagram in that anatomy. There was
Yeah.
one artery labeled as septocutaneous artery. So I was hearing it for the first time. So I just want to know what that was, sir.
Direct cutaneous vessel, sir.
So can I
Yeah,
answer
please,
that for
Aditya.
Pawan?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so all the blood vessels that reach the skin reach through certain tissues. So if they're perforating, if they're coming through the muscle to reach the skin, they are called as musculocutaneous because they're coming through the muscle. If they're coming through a septum, they're called as septocutaneous vessels.
Okay.
So these are the primarily two kind of ways in which a blood vessel reaches the skin to supply the skin.
Okay. And second question, Nishant?
Sir, in that slide where he had shown the differences between graft and the flap, he said that graft is not used to cover defects.
No, he said it doesn't use to use bridge defects, I think. So I think
A skin defect can be bridged with a
Of course.
graft. As in, is it?
no, skin defect can be closed with the graft, but I don't think can bridge it. I don't know what you meant. Pawan, what did you mean by bridging?
Sir, sir, in case
Go back to that
of
slide. Go back to that slide.
that is, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Here you said cannot
last
bridge
line.
defects. Last line, can bridge defects. So what
Yes,
do you
sir.
mean by that?
Sir, in the case of larger defects, graphs, graphs can not able to bridge the defects, sir. For that, we can use flaps.
I think Dr. Aditya can probably
Yes,
clarify this.
I'll come in. I'll just try to because basically Pawan has taken this material from a plastic surgery textbook.
Yeah.
So in plastic surgery terminology, when we talk about a defect, it does not mean a skin defect. So I think that was the confusion what Dr. Nishant has raised, that it can be covered with a skin defect. For a skin defect, it can be used. So when only a skin defect is there and there is no involvement of the fascia, or the bone is not exposed, or the tendon is not exposed, we call it a raw area.
Okay.
In plastic surgery terminology, we call it a raw area versus a defect. A raw area is an injury in which only the skin needs to be replaced. A defect is an area in which something more than the skin needs to be replaced. So that is why this terminology, that's why a graft cannot be used on defects, because defects are places where the tendon or bone will be exposed and that will need a flap cover.
Okay, I think
Thank you,
that explains it. Yes. Okay, continue. Any other questions at this stage?
Sir, Ajit here, sir.
And there is a question by Pavan. What is the elevator? You know, you mentioned the elevator of this one. What do you call that? Go back to
Reconstruction ladders.
reconstruction elevator. What is that? You mentioned it in passing.
Sir,
You said reconstruction ladder is now replaced by reconstruction elevator. What do you mean by that?
yes, sir. Sir, previously while performing any procedure, we have to allow all these procedures like wound healing, direct tissue closure, then followed by skin graft and all, sir. Nowadays, we can, depending upon the size of the defect, we can directly close the defect with the flap also, sir, depending upon our planning. So it becomes elevated that we won't follow all the steps. Depending upon that, we can use flaps directly, sir.
Pavan, are you happy with that answer?
Yes, sir. Actually, previously what we used to plan is to go by step. That is the local
Correct.
tissue transfer, regional
Correct.
tissue transfer, and then the free flap. But
Yeah.
with the advent of the routine use of free flap, nowadays most of the people are preferring the free flap, that is called as a reconstructive elevator, so that we can go directly to the top.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. So previously, it used to be a stepwise upgradation of the reconstructive process. Now you can actually tailor make it, and if a free flap is indicated, you go directly to free flap instead of using the other methods. Yes. Okay. Hey, Ajit, you had a question?
Sir, I wanted to ask Pawan about the disadvantages if he has not covered in the further slides.
Disadvantages of what?
Flaps.
Yeah, I think he will probably cover it. Okay,
Okay,
let us
sir.
see. You can ask that question later if he hasn't. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Continue, Pawan.
Yes, sir.
Physiology. I think that is where you were.
So,
Go back. I think you were in physiology. You finished this. Yes.
sir,
Okay.
physiology I discussed.
Yeah, you finished. Okay, continue.
Whenever we are performing to planning for a flap, we are following some principles to do a flap construction. That is, always replace the like for a like. That is, when whatever the tissue loss should be there, it should be replaced with the same tissue. Like example, muscle should be replaced with the muscle, bone should be replaced with bone. reconstruction in terms of unit. In case of facial construction, that is face flap procedures and all, the entire the forehead is considered as one unit, and the nose and all considered as one unit. In nose, the dorsum of the dorsum and tip are considered as subunits. If there is a defect in the tip of the nose, we have to reconstruct the entire subunit. That is, we have to reconstruct entire tip of the nose. This is the reconstruction in terms of unit. Have a pattern and a backup plan. So always when raising a flap, we have a pattern either in terms of defect, that is the shape of the defect, and similarly the shape of the flap should be planned. And if the flap what we planned is failed, we have an alternate plan, that is alternate flap we have to think. And never, that is never forget a donor area. That is while after elevation of the flap, that is we have to consider the donor area, donor area, whether it should be closed with any primary suturing, or it need any flap or any graft repair like that.
Okay.
Classification of the flaps is based on the circulation. Flaps are classified based on their circulation, congruity, configuration, and anatomical components. So based on the circulation, flaps are classified into random flaps and axial flaps. So random flaps, so they don't they have on an unnamed name, that is based on their indistinct vascular supply on dermal and subdermal plexus. Most of the local flaps are random flaps. For example, bipedical flap, VY advanced flaps, rotational or advancement flaps. Axial flap is based on the named blood vessel and from a direct cutaneous artery. The survival length of an axial pattern flap is entirely depends upon the length of the included artery. For example, nasolabial flap is angular artery, whereas in the case of forehead flap, supratrochlear artery. So based on the congruity, flaps are classified into local flaps, regional flaps, island flaps, and distant flaps. The distant flaps are further divided into pedicle flaps and free flaps. In this local flaps, that is the tissue which is adjacent to that open wound is need of coverage. In this, the wound on the lip may be repaired by the flap on the adjacent cheek. Most of the local flaps are random flaps, that is pedicle flaps and VY advancement flaps. Regional flaps, that is donor side, though not adjacent to the recipient side, it is within the same region. And based on the, it is rich subdermal vascular fluxus of the skin. For example, wound on the tip of the nose might be repaired with flap from forehead. Distant flaps, tissue that is transferred from a distant site, that is from non-contiguous anatomical site. It is of two types, that is pedicle flap and free flap. In pedicled flap, transferred while flap is still attached to the original blood supply, whereas in free flap, physically detached from their native blood supply and reattached to the vessels at the recipient site. So anastomosis is typically performed using microscope, hence it is microsurgical anastomosis. Island flap, it consists of skin and subcutaneous tissue with pedicle made up of only the nutrient vessels. The image in this slide shows medial plantar flap, which consists of medial plantar artery and its vein. So based on the configuration, flaps are classified into rotational flaps, transposition flaps, advancement flap, and interpolation flaps. Rotational flaps are the circular flaps of skin and the subcutaneous tissue. They should be revolve around a pivotal axis so that the flap, that is what we're getting, probably having mobilized a larger area of tissue with a wide vascular base for reconstruction. So the image in this slide show the primary defect is made into a triangle so that it is a arc is made that a primary defect, it is pivot around an axis and close the defect. In the case of transposition flap, these are rectangle or square and turn laterally to reach the defect. In between the tissue, there is no normal skin, so donor site can be closed primarily or with a graft, usually smaller in size than the advancement and rotational flap. Whereas in the case of interpolation flap, it is from a nearby but not immediately adjacent to the donor site, transposed either above or below the intervening skin to recipient defect. In this defect, there is interposition of the flap in which there is a intervening normal skin is present. Advancement flap, these flaps moves in unidirectionally based on the skin elasticity to stretch and to fill a defect. So there is no rotational and lateral movements is applied. It is of three types: single pedicle advancement flap, bipedicle advancement flap, and VY flap advancement flap. In single pedicle advancement flap, here the rectangle skin flap is moved forward by virtue of its elastic property. Here in bipedical flap, here the incision is made parallel to the defect so that the defect should be undermined and advanced. In case of VY pedicle plasty, the we made a V-shaped incision and we close the wound with an Y-shaped closure. In VY plasty, the technique allows most patients to regain sensation and 2-point discrimination. So based on their anatomical components, flaps are divided into skin flaps, muscle and myocutaneous flap, fascia and fasciocutaneous flap, and osseous and osteocutaneous flap. Hello, sir.
Yes,
Hello?
continue. Continue.
Yes, sir. Skin flaps here rely on the loosening of the adjacent skin to transfer. That is rhomboidal shaped flap, which is also called as Limburg flap. In this, we made a rhomboid incision and we remove the defect, and we made into anatomical points like A, B, C, D, and we made a incision in the that is parallel to the rhomboid, and we close the defect. In the case of jetplasty, so it transposes the two interdigiting triangular flaps. In this, it is usually used in gaining the length along the direction of the limb. Here, if this is a scar tissue like that, we made an incision at an angle of 60 degrees so that we interdigiting the triangular flaps so that without tension we use lateral skins to produce gain in the length. The common indications for jetplasty is lengthening of the contracted linear scars along the flexor creases and change the direction of the cosmetically unfavorable scars. In the case of muscle and myocutaneous flap, these are potential flaps.
Pavan,
Sir?
stop for the time being. There are a few questions, and I would like Aditya and the senior Pawan to intervene and give us some details about what he has spoken so far. I think
Hello. I think sir's voice is not audible now.
Yes, sir. Sir, meanwhile, can I ask a question, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Sir, what are the problem faced in advancement flaps when compared to the other flaps, sir? Like deformity or dog, is it common in advancement flaps?
There's no particular problem as such. The main problem will be the dog ear itself. When you if you don't take care of it with the Burroughs triangle or other things, that is the only other problem. And the only other problem that you can encounter is if the skin is not elastic, because the entire concept of advancement flap is based on the fact that skin is elastic. If there is a previously operated area or some other trauma has already occurred in that area, then the skin will not be that elastic, and then advancement will not be that effective.
Okay, sir. And one more doubt, sir. He has said about distant flap, free flap, and pedicle flap. In that free flap, he said we transfer that we show, and also island transfer. He said, may I know the difference between the free flap and that island flap? It sounds same to me. Like we
Island flap. Yeah, so island flap is basically a pedicle flap. You don't cut the pedicle. The vascular pedicle is intact. Only you have completely skeletonized the vascular pedicle, and then you're transferring to reduce the bulk around the vascular pedicle. That's the only difference. It's basically a pedicle flap. So the entire pedicle is left intact. Only the skin is being transferred from one area to the other in the same region. In free flap, you are going to cut the pedicle, transfer it elsewhere, and again rejoin the pedicle to another blood vessel in that area.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Pawan, there are some questions in this
Yes,
thing.
sir.
What type is the Lemberg flap? Whether it is an advancement flap, rotation flap, transposition flap, what is the type of the flap? Nishant has asked.
Sir, it is a
You have explained
sorry.
rotation.
No. Ajit, if you know, you can.
Transposition flap, sir.
Yeah. It is one of the type of a transposition flap.
Yeah.
And
it comes under the subgroup of rhomboid flaps.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Pawan, Nishant has asked, are tube flaps still being done? I remember reading about it called as a Wadding flap.
Sir, this
Sir,
one was
Aditya.
for you too, sir, not for Pawan.
Yes, sir. Aditya, sir, if you can tell, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. So tube flaps are almost obsolete. They're not being done anymore unless it is used as a salvage procedure. So basically, tube flaps were most commonly DP flaps. There's deltopectoral flaps for the reconstruction in the head and neck region. So these have been supplanted by free flaps and PMMC flaps. If at all very much required, if free flap is not possible, PMC can be done. But DP flaps, which requires tubing, is not very necessary nowadays because of the advent of microvascular surgery. And waltzing flap is a even more rare kind of flap, where if a regional flap is not able to reach, the pedicle is short enough to reach the forehead, for example, then you take the DP flap, attach it to the skin first, and then you again reattach it upwards to the forehead. So that waltzing also is not required anymore because of so many new flaps and free flaps, basically. Basically, free flaps have kind of made all these unnecessary surgeries obsolete, because they're more simpler, not simpler to perform, but then they're better for the patient, more convenient for the patient. So free flaps are nowadays done for all these kind of defects, where previously we used to use all these tube flaps, waltzing flaps, and all those things. So they are kind of obsolete.
Aditya, other thing
Sir.
is for the rhomboid flap, especially in for covering the very difficult pilonidal sinuses, the Limburg
Yes, sir.
flap. Can you give us the measurements how to actually do that? I think Nishant had said it, but I have forgotten it. So there is a measurement that how you actually
A
plan the
typical,
thing.
yes, a typical rhomboid flap will be generally 60-60 on the opposite side, 60 degree, 60 degree, and
Yeah.
120 degree on the two other sides.
Yeah.
So the rhomboid flap can be designed on all four sides of the rhomboid, and just the diagonal has to be extended, and then a parallel has to be drawn to one of the edge, depending on where the elasticity of the skin is there.
Okay.
And then that can be transferred into the defect. The defect will close primarily always.
Okay. Yeah.
It will be more easy for me to draw it and show, sir. It is a little difficult to say exactly. But then the typical rhomboid flap will have an angle of 60 degree on two sides and 120 degree on two sides.
Yes, sir. So for that, we need to, the measurement will be the vertical and the horizontal extent. Wherever we draw it, include the vertical extent should include all the defects, like, complex pilonidal sinus. And the horizontal line will be 0.6 times the vertical extent. And then we join the lines, and like sir said, you'll have 60 degrees, 120 degrees, and a diagonal and a parallel.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody understood that?
Sir, ideally this flap marking and flap rotation and all those things better to be shown rather than explaining, sir.
Right.
Otherwise it's very difficult to understand. Imagination.
Yeah.
In fact, the flap biogeometry is a big topic for as a plastic surgeon, but not maybe for this. But then in itself, it's a big topic of flap biogeometry.
I agree, because I was very scared of this, and that is why I didn't become a plastic surgeon. I knew I wouldn't be
No, sir.
able to hack it. Okay. Continue, Pawan.
Yes, sir. Muzzle and myocutaneous flap.
Niranjan is there. Niranjan is there, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Niranjan, anything to add?
Nothing, sir. Nothing.
Okay, continue.
Yes, sir. So these are more potential flaps because muzzle have its independent intrinsic blood supply. These are more flexible to conform to the wounds which are irregular in shapes. So muzzle flaps are classified according to their principal means of blood supply, pattern of vascular anatomy, and mode of innervation. So the Cormack and Limberty classification of fasciocutaneous flaps. In type A, it is dependent on the multiple non-named fasciocutaneous vessels that entering from the base of the flap, example lower leg flaps. Whereas in type B, there is a single fasciocutaneous vessel which runs along the axis of the flap. Whereas in example, that is scapular and parascapular flap. In type C, there is a multiple small perforator vessels which reach the flap from the deep artery running along the fascioseptum between the muscles. For example, that is radial forearm flap and lateral arm flap. With type C along with bone, that is osteomusculofasciocutaneous flap, then it is called as type D flap. So various common flaps like gluteus maximus.
Pawan.
It is.
Hello.
It is used.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You were speaking about the muzzle flaps, right?
Yes, sir.
But you have told the classification of fasciocutaneous flaps. You need to tell the classification of the muzzle flap, that is Mathis and Nayak classification.
I think he's got it. I think he's got confused. The Matheson classification, you put it there, no?
Yeah, I think it was there earlier.
Yeah.
Just go back.
Go back,
sir. But Cock and this Cormack and Limberty classification only I added.
That is for the fasciocutaneous classification.
Yeah, exactly.
Not for the muzzle classification.
Pawan, you had that slide when you showed me the presentation. You had that slide of Matthews-Nihai
That
classification.
is it. Yeah, yeah. Where is that?
Sir,
It is
I
coming
can't-
in next. I think it is
Next.
coming next. I think
Next. Go forward.
the
Pawan, go
PowerPoint you showed
forward.
also.
No, sir. No, sir. He called me. He has got confused that he thought that
Ah,
Carnegie
Which
and
one?
Lamberti is the most common thing.
no, go forward. I think there was a classification of the myokit. Pawan,
Next slide, Pawan. Next.
sir,
No, sir. He has deleted that, I think.
Yes, by
Okay.
mistake deleted it.
okay. Pawan, can you please tell us about the classification of myocutaneous flaps?
Sir, myocutaneous classification are mainly 5 types, sir. Musculocutaneous classification. The type 1 is the only major blood supply, dominant blood supply. The type 2 is the dominant blood supply with a few supplementary blood supplies. And the type 3 is the 2 major blood supply to that muscle. And the type 4 is the segmental blood supply, and the type 5 is the one dominant supply and the multiple segmental supplies.
Okay.
Yeah, it is always better in our thing, better to show in a slide,
Show
sir,
it.
then
Yeah.
understanding will be better.
Correct,
compared
correct.
to explaining, sir.
Okay. Continue, Pawan.
yes, sir.
Muscle and myocutaneous. Yeah.
Various common muscle flaps.
Ah,
Yes, sir. And yes, sir.
continue.
Yes, sir. So gluteus maximus. So it is used in ischemia and ischemic and sacral bed sores nowadays. But previously it is used for sacrum, ischium, and trochanter, and in breast construction also. So the dominant artery is superior gluteal artery and inferior gluteal artery. The muscle flaps like pectoralis major myocutaneous flap. It is used in coverage and reconstruction and functional transfer of free flap. So the dominant artery is pectoralis branch of the thoracoacromion artery, and the minor is pectoral branch of lateral thoracic artery. In this transverse rectus abdominis muscle flap, which is called as tram flap, it is either superior pedicle flap based on the superior epigastric vessels and inferior pedicle flap based on the inferior epigastric vessel. The superior pedicle graft flap is used to cover the post-mastectomy area or chest wall defects, and inferior pedicle graft is used to cover defects in the groin and the thigh. So latissimus dorsi flap, which is called as LD flap, most reliable and versatile flap used in the reconstructive surgeries. It is used in chest wall and post-mastectomy reconstruction. Here, the latissimus dorsi, it is mainly depend on the thoracodorsal artery. And serratus anterior, it is used in head and neck and thoracic axilla and posterior trunk breast reconstructive procedures. It mainly depends upon the dominant lateral thoracic branches of the thoracodorsal artery. So facial and fasciocutaneous flaps, which includes skin and subcutaneous tissue and underlying fascia, they can be raised without skin, so they are called as facial flaps. The facial flaps to provide coverage when skin grafts or random skin flaps is insufficient for coverage. So they are indicated when thinner flaps are required, and they are resistant to infection. They are not resistant to infection as muscle flaps, and monitoring flap failure is occasionally difficult. So radial forearm flap, which is a extremely versatile flap, that soft tissue replacement in head and neck surgeries we can use, and commonly used to replace external skin and internal mucosal lining. So the advantages is it is very pliable, and especially at the distal forearm. It is mainly depends on the radial artery. So Mathis and Neha classification of the faciocutaneous flaps consists of type A. It is direct cutaneous vessel that penetrates the fascia. For example, temporoparietal facial flaps. Whereas in type B, septocutaneous vessels that penetrate the fascia. That is example radial artery, forearm flap. In the case of type C, musculocutaneous vessels that penetrate the fascia, that is transverse rectus abdominis myocutaneous flap. Osseous and osteocutaneous flaps. The osseous flaps consists of only bone and also having a definite axial blood supply. Osteocutaneous flap is a bone containing flap with elements of skin and subcutaneous tissue or fascia with a defined axial blood vessel. For example, fibular flap, which are commonly used. In fibular flap is commonly used in head and neck for bony reconstruction, and other vascular bone flaps used in head and neck are iliac crest flap, scapula, and radial forearm flap. The advantages of this flap is it has long vascular pedicle and well vascularized bone, and it is depends upon the peroneal artery. So in case of fibula flap, it is mainly depends on the peroneal artery, whereas in iliac crest, it is depends on the deep circumflex iliac artery. In scapula, it mainly based on circumflex scapula or thoracodorsal artery. In radius forearm flap, it is depends on the radial artery, and calvarial osseous flap based on the superficial temporal artery or occipital artery, and genicular osseous periosteal flap mainly based on the articular branch of descending genicular artery. So the uses of flap is mainly recipient bed with poor vascular supply or coverage of the vital structures, reconstruction of the full thickness structures like eyelids, cheek, nose, lip, etc., and padding of the bony prominences. So the post-operative flap monitoring is the gold standard, is clinical observation. It includes any change in the flap color or in capillary refilling time we have to observe, and surface temperature we have to monitor, and blanching assessment. The complications of the flap is any seroma formation, hematoma formation.
Pawan, stop. Aditya?
Yes, sir.
Can you kindly elaborate on the clinical assessment of the viability of the flap?
Yes, sir. Can you go back, Pawan?
Yes, sir.
So the best way of assessing the flap is always clinical observation, sir. That what is written is correct. So even without touching the flap, also a flap viability can be told. So main thing is the color. Color of the flap is the most important thing. Color of the flap and blanching. Once you just tap it, we can just look for the blanching. Then we can look for the temperature and the turgor. So if the turgor of the skin is normal, then we can say it's viable. If it is the turgor is lost when the flap is lost. So the other thing which we routinely do nowadays, because every time a doctor is not able to see, so we train the nursing staff to prick the flap. So we ask them to prick with a syringe and look for a pinpoint bleeding in that area.
Okay.
And depending on the color of the bleed, we can tell whether the flap is surviving or not, or whether there's venous congestion or there's an arterial block. If there is no blood coming after a prick, that means there is an arterial block. If there is dark blood coming from that area, then that means there's a venous congestion. So always there has to be a small, just one drop of blood, but it has to be bright red. on pricking. So this is a kind of a gold standard now in when we consider monitoring with the help of nursing staff and other people. But as such, as clinicians and as doctors, only clinical observation and examination also is sufficient to identify.
If there is hematoma formation,
Yes, sir.
can you still tell whether this is a viable flap, because the color there may be discoloration?
Hematoma, if there is subdermal discoloration, then yes, sir. Then it will be difficult to identify. So then in that case, pricking would be better. But then hematoma would be restricted to a certain portion. The entire flap may not be discolored. So we can check in another portion of the flap.
Yeah.
So that can be done.
Okay. Any questions so far?
Any role for Doppler here?
Doppler, yes, sir. So when we do perforator flaps, when there is a well-defined perforator in the flap, so when we do an ALT flap, there is an anterolateral thigh flap. We always include a perforator in the flap, and that perforator can be mapped using the Doppler. So intraop only we mark the skin where the perforator is entering the skin, and then post-operatively we can ask the nursing staff to use the Doppler to kind of identify the pulsations of the perforator. That also can be done. But clinical observation again is always the gold standard. Doppler may not be available everywhere, or the people may not be trained to do Doppler. There are so many other ways also. We can use indocyanine green. We can inject indocyanine green and look for it, do a fluoroscopy examination to look for viability. We can also prick the blood and compare the blood glucose in the flap and compare it with the blood glucose in the normal sample. So there are various other ways, but the most common is of course clinical observation.
Yeah, clinical assessment. Okay. Any other questions?
Sir, what is venous crisis, sir? Is it like same what you explained now, or is it separate, sir, venous crisis?
I think there's just one more slide. I think after that we'll take all the questions. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay, continue.
So the complications of the flap is seroma formation or hematoma formation or flap necrosis and fat necrosis or donor site infection. And the causes of flap failure, poor anatomical knowledge when raising the flap inset with too much tension, local sepsis or septicemia of the patient, and the dressing applied too tight around the pedicle, which causes flap failure. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Questions now. I think Hari, you had a question.
Yes, sir. Is it a venous crisis in flap surgery? Is it like same happens at the end point of thrombus, and or is it something different?
Venous crisis means basically there will be venous congestion. So when we do any flap procedure, the entire flap depends on two things. One is the arterial blood flow to the flap and venous drainage from the flap to the body. So in either of these two, if either of these two are disturbed, then the flap is not going to survive. If there's an arterial problem, so the blood is not reaching the flap, so that is the flap will just die out of ischemia. If there is a venous problem, then the blood is reaching the flap, but the deoxygenated blood is not coming back into the body. It's getting accumulated into the flap. So that causes venous congestion. So this is congestion of the flap. So the flap will not die immediately, but after 2 or 3 days, the flap will die. So venous congestion can be mainly because of two causes. One is if there is a thrombus in the vein, or maybe because of the anastomosis is not done correctly, or if there is a kinking of the vein. If the vein is kinked, then all that also will lead to blockage of the vein and then cause venous congestion. So these are the two main causes of flap failure: the arterial problem and the venous problem.
Okay.
Dr. Ramakrishna, you had a question. Good evening, Ramakrishna. Dr. Naz, you had a question.
Hello.
Ramakrishna. Good evening.
In pedicle flap, how long we have to wait till we touch the pedicle?
The routine thing is 3 weeks, sir. So for every flap, whenever we do a pedicle flap, so before we detach the pedicle, 3 weeks is the general time. If the wound is very vascular and if the flap is small, then 2 weeks also is sufficient.
Okay. Naz, you had a question?
Yes, sir. Any role for low molecular weight heparin, sir, to prevent thrombosis?
Low molecular weight heparin used to be given Dextran during my residency time. We used to give Dextran to almost all the patients, but then we saw that the number of side effects of Dextran were more than saving the flap. So we used to almost many times lose the patient while we are protecting the flap. So we stopped using Dextran, and it's no longer recommended now to use Dextran in even in free flaps or in pedicle flaps. So we just go for Clexane, there is an enoxaparin, and that too if required. Generally, no anticoagulants are recommended now.
Okay. What is the antibiotic policy now for the flaps?
Antibiotics, sir?
Yeah.
Antibiotic policies are first for 5 days. Antibiotics are recommended because it's a raw area, and generally we do flaps for in areas where there is an existing defect. So bacterial colonization is expected, and so it's always better to cover with 5 days of antibiotics. Only 5 days is sufficient.
Okay, right. This one now for long course radiotherapy perineal defects after abdominal perineal resection. What is the recommended graft that you use? Is it gracilis muscle flap, or do you use the vertical rectus abdominis flap?
Both of them can be used because it depends on the size of the defect. If there is if the size of the defect is small, then gracilis is more than enough. Gracilis can be taken from both the thighs, so that will be enough to plug the defects generally. But if you are talking of a pelvic exentration kind of situation where there is a huge defect, then we may need more muscle, and that can be supplied either by a RAM flap along with the, VRAM flap. There's a vertical rectus abdominis muscle along with the skin pedicle also. So that can fill up a lot of gap. And if nothing else is possible, then we can use a free flap.
Okay. The other thing is now with the advance of this, this, what do you call that? Pressure dressing, the vacuum assisted closure. Do you supplant the use of flaps and then maybe use vac closures more frequently?
So vac is being used more and more frequently, but then that does not mean that all the defects can be covered with vac. Vac generally helps in if put early, then the defects start granulating, and even if a bone is exposed, sometimes even the bone gets covered by healthy granulation tissue. In that case, a flap can be avoided and simple graft can be done. But this is not in all the cases. So the vac will help in reducing the size of the wound, and it will help in some granulation tissue growth. But if a lot of tendons are exposed and if the bone is exposed, a flap will finally be the final solution for complex defects.
Pawan, your comments?
Sir, I have 2 questions, sir.
Yeah, Nishant.
Sir, when we were doing our rotational postings in Kidwai, thereafter MRM, they used to do a latissimus dorsi flap to cover the defect. And we were always told to minimize trauma as much as possible. So they kept telling us not to put the regular mattress, instead put the half mattress sutures. But does it actually make a difference, sir? Or is it just like a habit or something like that?
So it is always best to avoid trauma to the flap. So basically, when you put a mattress stitch on a flap, so the intervening tissue between the 2 bites is going to get ischemic. So because you have to understand that the flap is depending on a reduced blood supply than it was used to in its original place. When you're transferring it to the new place, its vascularity is going to get reduced. So it has to cope up with a reduced blood supply. In that case, if you are going to take mattress sutures will entail you taking 2 bites on that side. So the intervening skin of those 2 bites can become ischemic and become necrosed. And so the edge-to-edge approximation may not happen. That was the idea why this was prescribed. But now when we do free flaps vascularity is pretty good. So in free flaps, there is no need to do half buried suture anymore. But in pedicle flaps, yes, there is a role in pedicle flaps because the blood supply is already a little bit compromised.
Okay, sir. Sir, and the second thing with respect to this vascularity, long back when I had done a presentation in my PG days, that time I read something called as flap delay, where you kind of customize the tissue to hypoxia. Is
Yes.
it being done nowadays, sir, or like
Definitely.
it is being
Yes,
done?
yes, it is being done. See, again, whenever required, we take a free flap will be the best option, because that saves a lot of inconvenience to the patient. Pedicle flaps are always a little inconvenient for the patient, but when you have to do a pedicle flap and you need to reach, when the flap is not reaching the defect very easily and it needs to reach a farther area, then it's always safer to do a delay procedure. Always safe. It is still being done. It's not obsolete.
And this delay procedure is done how many days prior to the procedure, sir? As in
7 days before.
7 days.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any more questions?
Sir,
I
Ajit
think-
is here, sir.
Huh? Yeah, Ajit.
Sir, I wanted to add one more thing to the complications. Sir, in pedicle flaps, like suppose in we have hand defects or forearm defects where we do groin flap, there the patient will be in that, the hand will be in that position only. So one more complication we can add is muscle stiffness, joint stiffness, joint pain, because the patient has to be in that position for long.
Yeah. But then
Yes.
you can do physiotherapy and rectify the situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, and I had one question for Pawan, presenter, PG.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, sir.
He made a comment on Z-plasty for scars in the finger. So normally in Z-plasty, when we have a vertical scar, when we do a Z-plasty, it's at the expense of a horizontal extent. The horizontal area becomes smaller in order to make up for the excision of the scar. So in a finger, when we have a long scar, what do we do? Because we don't have that much horizontal extent to cover for it. So what is done? Pawan,
Sir,
you're there?
Pawan?
VY plus.
No, as far as I know, it's multiple Z plastic. You just make
Multiple,
it into
double Z or triple Z. Yeah.
make it into short segments instead of taking it as an entire thing. You make that long scar into multiple bits and do a Z plasty for each of them.
That's called a Z-plasty in series. So it has to be done in series.
Yeah, Z-plasty in series. Correct. Okay, I think it was an excellent discussion. I think, Pawan, you have done a good job in presenting. I would invite the comments of yes, Srikanth.
One of the common procedure we do is the limber flap.
Yeah.